let's talk about a name that is absolutely legendary in the brutal, high-stakes cocaine trade of the 20th century, Griselda Blanco. She wasn't just in the game. She was a pioneer, a kingpin, and truly one of the most ruthless and feared drug lords in history.
You know, she wasn't just a person. She was a brand. And that brand went by many names. The Godmother, that wasn't just a title. It was a declaration of her power in what was very much a man's world. La Dama de la Mafia, the Lady of the Mafia, that speaks to her roots. But the Black Widow? Oh, that one was earned in blood. That one tells you everything you need to know about her very personal, very intimate style of violence.
And her empire wasn't just big, it was just obscenely profitable. At its absolute peak, her network, which stretched all across the United States, was reportedly pulling in $80 million every single month. To put that into perspective, that's like $250 million today. That's not just drug money, that's the kind of money that builds small nations. So let's get into how she earned that title in the first place, the cocaine godmother. This is really about the staggering scale of her power and her influence. See, long before people even knew the name Pablo Escobar, Griselda Blanco was the architect. I mean, she wasn't just moving the product. She was basically creating the smuggling routes from Colombia to cities like Miami and New York. These became the super highways of the cocaine trade. She literally built the foundation for the entire drug boom of the 1980s. Okay, so you have to wonder, how does someone become one of the most feared criminals in history? Well, like a lot of these stories, it all starts with a very, very troubled childhood. She was born in Cartagena, but when she was just 3, she and her mom moved to Medellín. And this was not the tourist-friendly city you might see today. It was a place with deep, deep socioeconomic problems. So from the time she was practically a toddler, she was exposed to a life of crime. Now, this next detail, it's pretty disturbing, and it comes from someone who knew her very well, her former lover. He claimed her career in violence started when she was just 11. According to him, she allegedly helped kidnap a kid for ransom, and when the family didn't pay up, she shot him. A child killing another child. If that's true, it just completely redefines what you think of as a criminal prodigy. Her home life really wasn't much better. To get away from her mother's abusive boyfriend, she ran away at 19. She learned to survive on the streets of Medellín, becoming a really skilled pickpocket, and just learning those brutal lessons of survival that would pretty much define the rest of her life. So, all those survival skills she learned on the streets, they were about to be put to the test on a much, much bigger stage. After some time in New York and a quick trip back to Colombia, she returned to the US in the late 70s. And this time, she aimed right for Miami. This wasn't just a move, it was basically an invasion, and it kicked off her most powerful and her bloodiest chapter. When Griselda showed up in Miami, the city was a complete powder keg. Her arrival happened to be right at the start of what everyone now calls the Miami drug war. We're talking about a time of just shocking public violence, shootouts in broad daylight, hundreds of murders every single year, all as different groups fought for control of the cocaine trade. And it was in this absolute chaos that she cemented her most infamous nickname. See, she wasn't just a boss who gave orders from afar. Her ruthlessness was deeply personal, and it extended to the people who were supposed to be closest to her. To get to the top, she had partners. 3 of them, actually. 3 husbands who were with her in business and in life. And when they were no longer useful, or when they got in her way, she had every single one of them killed. Carlos Trujillo, Alberto Bravo, Dario Sepulveda. They were her husbands, and she was their executioner. That is how you earn the name the Black Widow. It's one thing to be a crime boss, but Griselda saw herself as something bigger, almost like a character in a movie. And this little fact tells you everything about how she saw herself. She named her youngest son Michael Corleone Blanco. It wasn't just a name, it was a message. In her mind, she didn't just run a crime family. She was the head of the Corleone family, living out her own very real, very bloody version of the Godfather. But here's the thing about empires built on this much public violence. They just don't last. You can't leave that many bodies in the street without someone noticing. And US law enforcement, especially the DEA, was finally closing in. And just like that, her reign was pretty much over. On February 17, 1985, after years of running one of the biggest drug operations in the country, DEA agents finally kicked in her door and arrested her at home. The law really came down on her from 2 different sides.
First, the feds got her on conspiracy to distribute cocaine. That was a 15-year sentence. But that was really just the warm-up. While she was serving time, the state of Florida built a murder case against her. She ended up pleading guilty to second-degree murder for 3 killings, which got her another 20 years to be served at the same time.
She really should have been facing the death penalty in Florida, but she got unbelievably lucky because of one of the most bizarre scandals you will ever hear about. The prosecution's whole case for first-degree murder depended on one of her former hitmen. Well, that case completely fell apart when it came out that their star witness was having phone sex with 2 secretaries from the prosecutor's office. You can't make this stuff up. His credibility was destroyed, and Griselda dodged a death sentence.
So because of that insane turn of events and a few other legal deals, she was eventually released from prison in 2004. They immediately deported her right back to her home country of Colombia. Her reign in the U.S. was officially over. And that brings us to the final chapter of her story. Her last years, her incredibly fitting end, and the surprising way she's lived on in pop culture.
I mean, just look at the arc of her life. From that first alleged murder as a kid to building a massive empire in the States, doing hard time, and then finally going back home. But the violence that defined her entire life, well, it was also going to define her death. So there she was, 69 years old, walking out of a butcher shop in Medellín. An assassin rides up on a motorcycle, fires 2 shots to her head, and rides off. It was a brutal, efficient hit. And it was also incredibly ironic. The motorcycle ride by assassination, that was the very method that Griselda herself had pioneered and perfected on the bloody streets of Miami. In the end, she died by her own invention. But her story didn't actually end with her death. In a strange way, it was just getting started. Her life has been turned into entertainment over and over again, in documentaries like Cocaine Cowboys, in big-budget Netflix shows, in movies. Rap stars drop her name in their songs. She's the subject of entire telenovelas. The real woman died, but the myth of Griselda became a permanent part of our culture. Which really leaves us with one last question. What do you make of all this? Was she a ruthless, one-of-a-kind monster, a tragic product of her violent environment, or has pop culture kind of turned her into some kind of twisted, feminist anti-hero? The true legacy of the cocaine godmother is every bit as complex and as brutal as the life she lived.